Welcome to our lesson on economic growth. We're going to start with this photo today. So for those who haven't seen this photo, here's this picture showing the differences at night, satellite photo. The region highlighted in the south that's all lit up is South Korea. Up here is North Korea. And it really shows you the startling impact that economic growth can have over time, because 50, 60, 70 years ago, these countries were maybe doing approximately the same. South Korea has had a more market-based system that has had robust economic growth over the years. They have electricity, right? We don't think of electricity as being all that exciting, but if you don't have it, it certainly is. North Korea has not. They've been more of a communist, socialist-style government. They haven't grown as communist, socialist-style governments have, across the world haven't had experienced any economic growth. And it's just a startling contrast. So, any one given year, the growth isn't dramatic. But if you take 1 or 2 or 3 or 4% differences year in and year out over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you get dramatic differences in the standard of living, and you see that from this particular picture. So economic growth, it's what drives the standard of living. In developed countries, economic growth can be small, seem relatively small. 3% per year does not necessarily seem dramatically large, but when you compound over time, it does make a huge difference. So let's look at a 109-year difference between 1870 and 1979 between 3 countries, the UK, the US, and Japan. In 1870, the United Kingdom, the UK, had the strongest economy in the world. The US was not a major economic power at that point, and Japan was really inconsequential. Japan's economy didn't make any difference worldwide. But the growth rates were different in these 3 countries. So in 79, the US had the world's strongest economy. Japan was the second strongest, and the UK was no longer among the strongest economies of the world. Why the difference? All had to do with the economic growth, right? These don't look like huge differences in numbers, 1.8%, 2.3%, 3%. But go to an Excel spreadsheet, type in $1,000 and see what happens to that $1,000 if it grows at 1.8% per year versus 2.3% per year versus 3.0% per year. You will get wild, dramatic differences in the end result, and indeed that's what you see across these 3 countries. So compound growth, right? If you deal with those in finance, you deal with the idea of growth over time. Makes a huge difference to an economy. So what is the Solow Growth Model? Well, first, this is named after Nobel Prize winning economist Robert Solow. It discusses the production function of the economy. So gross domestic product for an economy is some function. That's what this means for those who aren't as familiar with the math notation. The F indicates gross domestic product is a function of the amount of physical capital, right, the tools used to make other products, or equipment used to make other products, human capital, the ability of workers in an economy, and natural resources. So it's a very general model, right? Gross domestic product, some function, there's some relationship between the amount of physical, human, and natural resources. These are the 3 factors that help determine a country's output, and related to the output, how much the economy is going to grow over time. So physical capital, I expect you know this, but it's the stock of equipment and structures used to produce other products. Sometimes you produce other physical capital, but right, it can range from screwdrivers, tools, tractors. This looks like maybe more basic equipment in developing countries. For me, as a professor, I'm recording this on a computer. That's the physical capital that allows me to produce these video lectures. So that's physical capital. Equipment to produce goods and services. Human capital is the knowledge, skills workers acquire through education, training, and experience. What can you bring to a job as a worker that you have acquired, right? Through education, training, and experience. It's extremely important, right? I mean, it's not as, you don't see it like you would see tools, tractors, computers, etc., but it's extraordinarily important to an economy. The ability of workers to accomplish complex tasks is crucial, and that's why it plays a part in the growth of a country. Now, natural resources, I'm sure you know what this is, right? Goods and services provided by nature, land, rivers, mineral deposits, can help, right? Some economic success. Those who've got a lot of oil, right, can survive for, there's some countries that aren't really that, well-performing, except for the fact that they have natural resources. They have a lot of oil. So there are a lot of Middle Eastern countries that their economy really is kind of a mess, but they have a lot of natural resources. So the marginal product, we've talked about the change in output relative to input if you've had microeconomics, in the microeconomics section. Marginal product, when referring to the Solow Growth Model or macroeconomics, is just the change in gross domestic product when you add an input. You add one more productive worker, how much will your output increase? The idea of diminishing marginal product is that additional inputs will have less impact on gross domestic product than the previously added inputs. Right? The first amounts of land, labor, and capital will be most important. As you add subsequent amounts, you see diminishing returns. Now, diminishing returns does not mean output drops, right? Here from part D, from unit of labor 3 to 4, D to E, output goes up, but it doesn't go up as much as it went up from C to D. From E to F it goes up, but it doesn't go up by as much as it went from C to D or D to E. This is what you call diminishing marginal returns. The extra return is less. You're still getting a return, but it's not as much. That is different than negative returns, where adding an input decreases output, where you see from H to I. Diminishing marginal product, additional inputs would have less of an impact on growth or on GDP. So how does technology affect growth? Technology can shift this production function. You get more, if you improve technology, whether it's improved computers, improved tools, improved equipment, each extra unit of labor can produce more. It can shift the production function upward. Several types of technology are able to improve GDP, are able to shift the production function upward. Here's a short list. I'm sure you can come up with a lot more, right? Faster computers, GPS versus maps, faster internet, better crop production tools. Some of it would be equipment, some of it would be with seeds that are genetically engineered, and so they can better withstand drought and use fewer chemicals, right? All of these things are technology improvements that have helped improve gross domestic product. In addition, for economic growth, the institution or the government can matter. So what are some conditions for a government that matter for economic growth? Well, taxes should be low in order to encourage growth, encourage people to work. But they do need to be high enough to sustain whatever governmental oversight within a particular country. A stable currency is important. There's always political corruption, but at least having minimal amounts of political corruption. And the final point's a big one, no risk of the government seizing property. Right? If a new government comes in, is it going to seize the property of the people they don't like? If that happens, that certainly is going to be have a negative influence on economic growth in a particular country.